My name is Dee Dee Myers, and I'm with DDJ Myers, and we're proud to be a gold sponsor for you here today and really enjoying the conference. So glad to be part of it. Up next is someone who doesn't really need an introduction, but we're going to give her a great one anyway. With over 25 years in the industry, Christie, where is she here? Christie Summervill is the country's leading expert in compensation strategy for banks and credit unions. She's a visionary CEO and founder of BalancedComp. Her obsession with data paired with relentless drive to serve HR professionals has shaped the most comprehensive compensation software and market reporting needs in the industry. Christie's team surveys hundreds of financial institutions every year, producing one of the 5 largest surveys in the United States, and she uses the data to provide real-time, no-fluff insights into what's really going on with pay. Today, she's bringing all of that expertise with her signature wit, which I love, to a session that tackles the compensation trends you can't afford to ignore. So please help me welcome Christie. Thank you.
Good morning. Wow, Urs, that was great. I am so glad to know that I have that radical humility nailed. And with that, I would like to give myself full credit for laying out this wonderful conference all by myself. No, I couldn't do that even if I did want to. And so with that, I'd like the FinComp team to stand up so you all know who they are. So if you're on the FinComp committee, I'm going to ask you to stand up so everyone can recognize you. Thea, Andrew. And in addition, I would like the entire BalancedComp team to stand up, without whom I am just a post-middle-aged woman with Excel spreadsheets and a lot of surveys. Absolutely. And what about this resort? Woo! Definitely. Love it here. Absolutely. I wanted to, before we got started, to ask our first-year attendees to stand up. If this is your first year that you've been at FinComp, would you stand up? Oh my goodness. That is wonderful. Good for you. And would the others, our second and third years, please stand up, our repeat attendees? And now just the third years remain standing. If there are any people who've been to all 3, remain standing. Wonderful. Yeah, great, Phil. I'm glad you came to all 3. That's great. That's great. Where are we? Okay, good. Okay, I wanted to, since it was called Sense and Sensibilities, I wanted to start off with a quote from Jane Austen, who I'm pretty sure was an HR director who was explaining to her board why she needs a 4% labor budget when she said, "I can listen no longer in silence. I must speak to you by such means as within my reach. You pierce my soul. I am in half agony and half hope." So it's not an easy conversation, is it? Yeah, and moving on. Oh, how did my straight A student, 15-year-old granddaughter get into my presentation? I'm not sure. But Dee Dee, I know you're into recruiting executives. Give her 25 years. She will be young CEO material right there. All right. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about the market landscape and what's shaping the compensation. We're going to talk about employee expectations, top trends for the 25 and 26 years. What's this going to mean for you? you're going to feel like you're drinking from the end of a water hose. There's a lot of data that I don't think you can find anywhere else in the nation. There's always a gap that you have to deal with between what boards want to pay and what employees are expecting, right? And I thought it was fascinating, according to NerdWallet, thank you so much, a San Francisco finance company. And this is what, from a generational point of view, what they view as a fair salary increase. 8.2% for Generation Y, 11.2% for millennials, 7% for Generation X, and 5.6% for baby boomers. So the expectations are maybe not grounded in reality, but maybe they are. Did anybody here get an 11% salary increase last year? No? An 8%? Not even? No, that's right. That's not. So there is a difference there between expectations and what they think is that word fair, and what you can what's actually reasonable or fiscally responsible. So despite these expectations, I think we're all aware that actual wage growth has been a little bit more modest. Over the past year, wages have grown an average of 4.1%, and this really highlights a growing gap between workers' perspectives and the reality of what wage increases actually are, especially among the younger generation. That might call for some onboarding, some management or some training, some education. And no, I stuttered over the word management, but actually you do need to do some comp training for your managers, because they so often get those frontline questions. So in 2025, Deloitte State of Total Rewards reported that 84% of the organizations report that pay is the #1 reason for voluntary turnover in the exit interviews. 51% said employees who are planning to leave, planning to start look around, are interested in a better salary. However, what's so interesting is that in the beginning, when they're looking for a job, when polled, only 13% would have said that tangible rewards and wealth are the most important thing. So there's another really important gap between when they're looking for a job and they're like, pay's a factor, but I'm more interested in culture, I'm more interested in being a part of something that's bigger than myself. I think that's a big one. And I honestly think that employee-centric banks and credit unions, I don't want to pass by this slide too fast, because you are, I've just heard it here even today, very employee-centric. You really give a damn about your employees a lot. And you're really trying to create a culture where they feel like they can effectively use their skill for their own betterment and the betterment of their family. And I think that there is more that I'd really like to encourage HR to do to capitalize on that. I think it feels like it's just a little passing tagline or something when they first apply for a job, making members' lives better, becoming a premier financial provider, and then you never hear of that again. We don't really connect the dots as effectively as we can. I really think you need your own marketing person to remarket HR to your internal staff and capitalize on that. You have such a rare opportunity. And I'd say that even now, as we're more and more wondering how tariffs are going to affect things, if you were in HR and manufacturing, you probably wouldn't be talking about culture quite as much. But if you did, it'd still be a little easier for you. So I think that I just really want to encourage you to link arms with your marketing people and do a deep dive on your HR strategy, your HR brand, and how do you carry that through to that total experience. The more effective you are at that, I'm not saying that pay's not important, paying competitive to market's important, but I think you marginalize, I'm leaving for pay, I'm leaving, you tie into that 13% reason on, it wasn't the most important thing to begin with. And then suddenly it becomes the most important thing. How does that happen? Right? How does that happen? So All right. So then, one of the key trends that we are seeing in the research right now in relationship to credit unions and banks really looking for efficiency is increased contingency workers and also outsourcing as much as possible. And it's very interesting because only 60%, 60% of them choose that voluntarily. It's something they want, and it underlines their need for flexibility, project-based employment, cost savings, and 35% of them are professional. So that's really different from the way that it was, a couple of decades ago, where it was mostly just those short-term manufacturing jobs or admin roles, and they were there for 6 months. So increased contingency workers. We have examined our headcount audit report, which I think many of you are familiar with. And we're not seeing a lot of headcount reductions yet. If there is any, it would be through attrition. Certainly no one's advertising that, but I would expect that just through attrition you might start to. I noticed last year I was disappointed to see that training went down just like one headcount. Maybe it was an outlier, but I've got my eye on that because it does seem like when companies say efficiency, for some reason, they mean cutting training. And that seems like what the most highly productive organizations don't do that, but it's quite a common thing. So we'll keep an eye on that and see where that pans out. So let's talk about some of the different departments and what some of the roles are that we're seeing an increase in contingency workers. Technology and IT support. Core system conversion specialists, especially during, if you have a Scimitar or Fiserv implementation. I see some heads nodding here in the room, so that resonates with some people. Cybersecurity analysts. It doesn't seem like people ever get tired of cybersecurity breaches. They seem to be using their skills there. So for audits and breach responses, so fascinating. Software developers inside of your organization. Immediately my radar used to go up when someone would say, would you grade this job for a software developer? And I thought, yeah, right, they're just using SQL and pulling over some reports and you're calling them a software developer. But that's not the case anymore. That's not true at all. That many of you are developing proprietary software, and that is not a build it one and done. That is a build it and keep building it, keep testing it, keep improving it, keep changing it kind of thing. So, it could be custom APIs, but there's also a lot of FinTech integration. So are you seeing a lot of new titles? If you've been in HR for more than 5 years, are you seeing some titles that you have never heard of before? And you're like, you want me to grade an agile engineer? What is that? There are some new jobs. Help desk technicians are another one for handling overflow and temporary surges, data migration, and QA testers. And don't worry, your CTO thinks they should all be paid what the CEO is paid. So that makes that easy. Compliance and risk. I want to point out we have Armor here today. I want to tell you, when I met Deborah, it was at a $2 billion organization in New York City that had a huge embezzlement issue. The CEO had gotten imprisoned because of embezzlement. Anyway, I heard her talk and I was just fascinated at how interesting she could make compliance and how much she knew and the story she could tell. I thought she was fantastic. So, if you're finding yourself thinking about regulatory compliance auditors for pre-exams or post-mergers, which we will talk about shortly, you should think about compliance and think about Armor. BSA and AML analysts during spikes and suspicious activity reviews, and then risk assessors for vendor due diligence. That is, I will say that even as recent as 3 years ago, It wasn't uncommon for a new client to have their upfront vendor management stuff. That's pretty new. But did you know that like 95% of them never ask for an update on that, ever? And so now it's more common that we're getting them every year, and they're like, okay, I know you were compliant when we started, but where are you today and what's going on? We're finding them catching up for that. So business continuity, model validation, these are some areas that we're seeing some compliance jobs. Yeah, accounting and finance, even controllers or CFO consultants during transitions, and CECL, as CECL has become a very important, that is not a job that you can take a senior accountant and just teach them how to handle your CECL exams, right? So that does take some real expertise, a lot of mental complexity, a lot on the line there for the organization. And HR folks, if you're not familiar with CECL, you should probably, right after this meeting, do a Google search, ask Grok about it, and figure out what you need to know about CECL. In commercial lending, commercial loan review specialists, credit analysts at all different levels, and with all the mergers with banks and credit unions. And what that really means is that credit unions are getting into commercial lending in a bigger way. And historically, credit unions might just outsource their credit analysts. They have a QSO, they have a credit analyst, and we don't need that. Now, that's not going to work in those environments where you've actually merged with another organization where their commercial lending has a major impact on the bottom line. You need to know and understand the role of credit analysts. And if you're only going to hire one, it's not going to be level one. You may not call it 1, 2, and 3, but you didn't hire one because you don't need someone to cut their teeth on credit analysts if you're just getting into it. You need someone who can carry the weight. So I say that because there are different levels of pay, and you want to make sure you're nailing it accurately for the role, and you might be new to those roles. So anyway, we're happy to help you out with all that understanding and all of those jobs as you assimilate what do these changing and evolving strategies mean to your jobs, whether it's contingency workers, whether it's your outsourcing, or whether you're going to bring it in-house eventually. We're happy to help you sort through that and what it is that you need, because I find that executives can throw a lot of words at you that sound like it's a grade 24. It doesn't necessarily mean it is. So let us help you sort through that. Operations and administrative support, mortgage processing. I've heard of organizations, clients that close their mortgage department down and just outsource everything, but keep the servicing during this slow trend. But mortgage processing, closing coordinators, and even collection agents. And let me tell you, I like to connect what's going on in the jobs world with what's going on in the strategy of the organization and what's going on in the economy. So as your non-performing commercial loans are increasing. So it was 0.85 just second quarter of this year, up from 0.75 overall in the fourth quarter of 2024, but a year ago it was 0.65. So it is your non-performing commercial loans, those are the ones that are in trouble, are growing, and that is going to put pressure on your collections, who's collecting them. It is not your grade 7 consumer collector that is dialing for dollars. It's completely a different role. So make sure you're not calling them exactly the same. It's usually special workout, things like that you'll want to be aware of. So, this is, and also that very fact that we're talking about has caused a year-over-year increase of 18% in your provision for loan loss. So I know we don't have any CFOs in the room, but what that means to you as the HR executive is that, again, every year we say the same thing, margins are being squeezed. Well, they are, and this is coming from non-performing loans not only the non-performing loans, but as those loans are not performing, there's a requirement to put aside a provision for loan loss that is also increasing, also putting a squeeze on your margin, which is behind the conversation when you're saying we need 3.9% for a labor budget, and they're saying, I'm not so sure we want to do that. So those are some things that are kind of going on in your industry. All right. And then, of course, things like document management clerks for big scanning projects. You just want it one and done. Let's get it over with. A lot changing in marketing. Wow. With digital marketing contractors, SEO, SEM, content for product launches. Being a good marketing specialist does not mean that you're equipped or skilled at the content that you need to write. That's a whole nother skill set, and it doesn't just come with a marketing degree. So whether you're outsourcing that, insourcing that, UX designers for website and mobile apps that you own, that's amazing, that's going on. And then customer experience auditors to analyze your journey mapping. All these jobs, many of these jobs, we wouldn't have been talking about 5 years ago. They wouldn't have been anywhere on the radar. Yeah, evolving skills. It's not just about sending them to a conference so that they can learn some skills and, or go to your banking association meeting or something like that. They can learn it and be up and going. So, and then finally, strategic consulting like BalancedComp. That's true. When you need that outside expertise, sometimes it's better to have outside expertise. And then AI consultants. Anyone hiring AI consultants? Anyone? Not yet? Oh, you'll see. Oh, over here at CDC in Atlanta, Georgia. Am I right? There you go. All right. Very good. Yeah. If you're not, you will. Anyone hiring jobs like AI engineer, AI analyst, anything where you actually want to own that intellectual capital. Great. That was Metropolitan Bank in New York City. Yeah. I just met her right before, so that was the only reason I remembered that. I'm really not that good. But a win's a win, right? Yeah. If you're not, you will. In fact, we're being asked to grade these jobs, and you'll see that we have some in our job description library. You'll see some jobs around there. So if you start to want to examine what an AI analyst is and does, what an AI engineer does or developer, you'll see that we try to get ahead of those things when we can and put that in there for you. So these roles are going to support strategic transformation, may not be needed full time, but you need someone in many of those strategies that know more than you can teach them. Like they're not homegrown knowledge. They need to know what you don't know. What is it you don't know that you need to know in order to be ready for tomorrow? So hiring these roles. Are there any jobs that maybe I didn't mention and that you're like, this is a unique one? Anyone have any? Someone running around with a microphone? I think, someone? Virginia, Jennifer's coming over to you so we can hear you. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thanks. We're starting to see more in-house attorneys at credit unions. I've seen them at banks, but more conversations. Are you seeing that and what that looks like and what that structure is, where they report to?
I think I have that further on in the presentation, but I'm really glad that you said it because it begs some really important observation. In-house attorney. You can have an in-house attorney that handles collections. You can have an in-house attorney that handles mergers and acquisitions. They're both called in-house attorney. You might call them both general counsel. They are not the same grade. They may all look at an attorney's survey. Here's a pro tip for you. It would be, I've run into it many times where they're like, but look at this lawyer's survey and this is what I should be making. In those surveys, they're actually expected to bring in income or they lose their job. So, keep that in mind when they start pointing you there as a point of reference for what they should be paid. They don't have to do that. But the experience, the interpersonal skills, the agency, the mental complexity, the potential for error, are these sounding familiar? And the organizational impacts between handling collections, and those collections are just consumer and mortgage, okay? Or consumer, mortgage, and commercial, and I also serve HR or any other department. Or we have a strategic plan for mergers and acquisitions, and this is a key partner in that. 3 different job grades I just talked about, right? So those are some things to think about. But yes, that's a brilliant observation. As Urs would say, thank you for bringing this up. So anyway, I'm trying to use these new skills because I'm so tender on people. Don't laugh, Phil. Are there any other jobs that that you're seeing more of, hearing titles that don't resonate with you? Anything new? Yes, ma'am. Oh, yes, thank you.
Chief Strategy Officer.
Ah, that's a good one. Anyone else have Chief Strategy Officer jobs? Yeah. Yeah. How does that work in your organization? Do you mind me asking? Because I get, again, my radar goes up with the title. It
Yeah.
sounds a little fluffy. Like, are they sitting around strategizing all
Yeah.
day long, all week long?
Actually, we
What are
don't
they
have
doing?
one. We don't have one at Rally, which
Oh,
is
you
why
don't?
which is why I was asking, because we're seeing more of it as well. So I'm curious too,
Okay.
what other people are
Would
doing.
someone like to speak to that? Right down here in the middle, Jennifer. And I saw you over there. I haven't forgotten you, and I want to hear what you have to say.
We have this position, Chief Strategy Officer, and I guess the advice I would give, I think it offers a lot of opportunity to dig into things, but you need to be pretty intentional, whether it's coming from the CEO or amongst your executive management team, exactly what they're doing. Otherwise, they get into a lot of areas that, including human resources. But I mean, a lot of times, I think really in our model, what our expectation would be they're getting involved in mergers and acquisitions. They're getting involved in where we might be going in terms of new territories to open up organically. Also, we might be looking at new products. And working alongside maybe chief operations officer and so forth. So, I mean, I think that's the good news behind it is I think there's a lot of room for a role like that to really kind of, sort of be the quarterback of seeing that initiatives get on the radar and see them through. The downside is that they can definitely go rogue if you're not careful. And
What kind of background do you think would be ideal for a chief strategy officer like what you're talking about?
Well, our particular chief strategy officer had a lending background, but also had started his career in operations, branch management and so forth, and then slowly evolved, became our chief lending officer, and then just through some different initiatives, we explored a new path with him. And so yeah, I mean, I think you probably operations and or lending, but also has to have a pretty good acumen on the financial side of the business as well.
It's definitely not a benchmark job yet. You don't see it in the salary surveys yet. So it is something that probably operates a little differently in different places. That was good. Thank you so much for sharing that. Jennifer, there was a woman over here that had another job that she's seen.
I was just asked to grade grant. The title changed a couple times, so pardon me if I get it wrong. It's the grant funding manager.
Oh,
So somebody to help write
did you
grants
say
for us?
branch?
Grant.
Oh, grant funding.
Grant funding manager.
Okay.
Which was weird. It was a little bit outside of the box for us. We did do the salary grade. We've hired her now. She's wonderful, but she helps to write grants for the credit union or for for us to utilize with some community impact strategies that we're doing, as well as she owns we give out grants to local teachers. So she kind of owns that project and that initiative, reviewing all of the applications and creating a committee to help review the applications and such. So it was a little bit different for us, but she's doing great.
That sounds great. That's a job that you can definitely tell if it's paying for itself, right? If they're getting and winning grant. Did anyone else have any other that they want? Oh, Dee Dee, of course, you would be an excellent person. You don't mind running clear across the room, or Jordan, is there any other microphone over on this side of the room?
Chief Strategy Officer, I appreciate everything you said there. What we're seeing for that is they don't have a business line reporting to them, which is a problem sometimes. Yet they do need to own a lot of executing strategy, which means they tap into everybody's resources. So how they network and influence others is super important. The other one we're seeing is see if this helps. All right, is that better? The other one we're seeing more of a different flavor to is the Chief Administration Officer. And the ones that we're looking at right now, the CEOs call them the kitchen drawer, right? Is that those things that, nobody else does, but what happens there, sometimes they're also the board liaison, so they take care of the board, which is super important in a lot of regards we could talk about later. And they put facilities under there, sometimes training and development, especially for the organizations that want to do more development. But those are things we're seeing there, kind of a new twist to it. In the past, we saw HR counsel, in-house counsel report to, but that's now over Chief Risk Officer. But lots of blends. I'd love to hear what you're all hearing more later, but thank you. I'll give it up.
I'm never sure when I see that title what's going. I would guess marketing and HR would be like fairly common if they throw that together under someone, but I never know for sure. I always presume I don't know until I get into it.
Every place they title it the same that we're working, but what it means is different, so it's unique. So it's unusual.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So good. Thank you for your contributions. I really appreciate all of your comments on that. A lot of evolving roles, whether you're outsourcing or internally, and there's a lot of strategic transformation that's going on that maybe might not be needed full time, but then again, some of them might. I brought you some data today that I didn't think I had ever seen, and I didn't know if you had either, but I was just amazed when I looked at what's going on in the world of banking and credit unions, which I'll look at credit unions here in just a minute. We started in 1990 when there were 12,343 banks in the United States. And by the time we were at 2024, there were only 4,462 banks in the United States, where the deposits, on the other hand, were 1.5 trillion. And while they reduced headcount by 300%, the deposits that they're now managing are 17.74 trillion, right? And at the same time right now, I want you to just take a look at the average number of acquisitions that were going on and are still going on. What was so fascinating about the banks is of the 162.5 in 2024, 63 of them were by credit unions. Woo, that's a lot. And then looking at the credit union side, we started out with 14,549 credit unions, and we're down to, again, 14,555 by 2024, with 201 billion deposits under management, up to 2 trillion. And you can see the number of acquisitions. So why am I showing you this? Think about how does this impact the jobs, the expectations of the jobs? How does this impact? Like, that's a lot of deposits. That I didn't look at customers. I'm sure that would have told us a little bit more about this journey. But think about how much more. Not only is it leaner, but how much more we're expecting from these jobs. Now, we've added automation, and we're going to get into AI, but still, in the meantime, this is a lot more. Any of you, I don't know if some of you started from a teller background. It's always fascinating to me when I meet an HR person that came from that kind of an operational background. They have a completely different perspective. I mean, they just have an additional faceted perspective, let me put it that way, by coming from that. But this makes a big difference in what is expected. We see that employment per dollar of bank assets has really increased. Well, we all know wages have gone up, so they're now managing this would be good information for you to go back and compare for yourselves, 7.3 million per employee versus 5.6 million just 6 years ago. And with credit unions, it's 6.7 million per employee versus 2.6 million just 5 years ago. So both of them have really increased the salary to asset ratio just in the last 4 years, okay? Reflecting wage inflation, reflecting recruitment and compliance pressures, and evolving strategies. I think this all by itself is a good reason to pause and consider not just what are we paying competitive to market, but who are we paying? And the use of tools like with Results, with their Profiles International over there, like pre-employment testing, I made the mistake of allowing myself to believe that, well, we just hire professionals and we don't want to put them off, and so we'll just skip that part of it. You cannot waste that kind of time and money with the wrong choice when you're increasing the expectations at the speed of business, at the agility of business, and shifting. You cannot make the mistake. And I do want you to know, and I'm not just shamelessly plugging Dolly, but oh, there you are. Shout out. She's doing free profiles, and I know the first time I had that done, it did everything but print out my picture. I was like, oh my gosh, this is better than the crystals. Just kidding. No, it was really good. It was really, really amazing. So anyway, banks generally a little leaner compensation between, here's another way for you to look at it, 1.6 to 2% of your assets. Credit unions, a little bit higher operational expenses because they can, because their reason for existence is different, and it's not for stakeholder dividends or wealth. So they can run a little bit higher, between 1.5 and 2.1%. But both of them would mean that a financial institution with about $1 billion in assets is roughly paying $15 to $20 million per year by the end of last year. So employee count per asset dollar has decreased as banks and credit unions are really pushing for efficiency via automation and digital services. All right, have you felt that trend? It's so different than in 2022, right? Where they're like, they're so concerned about the Great Resignation, and if we could just show them that their comp ratio was low compared to where they should be based on the amount of experience that they have in their role, and they're like, fix it. And now they're like, we don't have to. The unemployment rate is back to 4.3%, so we can wait on that. Tough conversations for you guys. I know you're all having tough conversations around that. All right, let's talk about some emerging jobs. Business analysts, business systems analysts, data analysts, business intelligence analysts, 1, 2s, and 3s. I do want to give you a pro tip. It kind of bothers me a little bit, to be honest, because I know they love to use titles. Don't they all love titles? Woo, they love them some titles, for sure. But I see that the business intelligence analysts, in particular, in your industry, they're not really required to tell you what the data means and to form an opinion around it. And they still want to be paid like them. They'll still Google, I ain't paid enough.com. And they will see that salary and it will be more than what they're paid. And I'm not saying that they don't need to use Power BI and have technical skills, but I just think we have to be careful about titles. And then if you did hire one, you might not be looking for the junior, but you didn't call it a 2, so then the next guy comes around and just gets that same grade. There are so many mistakes like that can be made that will mess up your salary structure. And I mean, once you get it right, you kind of want to maintain it, right? So you can focus on all the other things that are important to what you do. So be mindful of that. Salesforce administrators, CRM analysts and specialists, several different levels. I see some heads shaking on that. Raise your hand if those are new jobs to you, like in the last 2 years or so. You're seeing more of that. Yeah, absolutely. Full-time jobs and fairly complex work. So senior level digital marketing specialists, jobs all around the process improvement. Like their whole job is to examine workflows for efficiencies. And that sounds like a great job. You could be doing that better. And you could be doing that better. So, and even at the executive level where they're the head of process improvement and they just get to go around and telling you how you should, actually there's a lot of value in it. As organizations are struggling for efficiency, that is the key these days. And then of course, different levels of application developers. So those are some emerging jobs. And of course, if you're going to have application developers, you're going to need an application development manager. It could be a director, it could be a VP. They could be the exact same job, but just depending on who they're working for, they got an officer title or not. Application analyst, application support specialist, higher level digital services, much higher level. I just was really impacted by the $1 billion financial organization where the CEO, I remember his comment that he thought that was the hardest job in the organization. So coming from a CEO of $1 billion organization, that says a lot. And then, of course, higher level accountants that are non-management, very complex, and they may focus on budgeting, reporting. So not, it may be called accountant 2 or 3, but it could be much more complex than what the surveys are showing. So it really has to be looked at. And yeah, there I mentioned your general counsel at different levels. So these are some other emerging jobs. Elsewhere inside of your organization, what's going on is that SBA lending is a thing. It's a very big thing. The SBA forecasts, this is important to you, a total volume rising to $55 to $56 billion this year, which is a 10 to 12% increase. Now, if we just hold that on its face, can you think of any other lending that you can say is increasing 10 to 12%? Probably not, and none with the kind of margins that SBA lending are. So for 2025 across the 7A program, smaller loans, those are those that are, it's really important you define these. Those that are under 50K, that affects your job. So if you have an SBA lender and they're focused on under 50K, we know on its face that's not as complex as those that are over a million, right? So it's important, but you may just call them all SBA lenders. So it's important that we really dig down and understand your program, understand how some of you are playing in SBA lending, and that's okay. It's like it's peripheral. We're going to dab our toes in it. Others of you are saying, I am in. This is a big strategy, one of the biggest ones, going to have the biggest impact here on our organization. It's the most important one for the next couple of years. So, those that are under 500,000 jumped 40% year over year. So strong demand from a wider borrower base, and they don't have to get it through banks and credit unions. They can get it through other organizations now too, because the licensing for that has really expanded. So, and I will say it's so interesting that this increased demand for SBA lenders, underwriters, processors, directors, because they have like a 7 to 9% margin, okay, it just seems like they're one grade higher. It's the exact same thing as a commercial processor, but they're paid one grade higher because the market will bear that, all right? And so I think there's also a potential error to slide that in with the commercial lending, like you're commercial lending, but you also do a little SBA. Well, just know that once they get skilled at that, they can find themselves a really good opportunity that's going to pay them one grade higher, and they're going to pay a lot higher on the incentive pay than the average 10 to 20% that a commercial loan officer might get on their base pay. So that's something that you'll really want to consider as you look at SBA lending. Has SBA lending grown inside of your organization significantly? Raise your hand if that's true. We're seeing. Okay, definitely. Okay, all right. If it hasn't, you're very likely, you may be very likely to be hearing more about that. So, all right, salary increase budgets remain above the pre-pandemic norms. I'm going to say the answer is 3.9% on average, even though core inflation is normalizing at 3.1%. As well as job growth is slowing. And so here's a pro tip, I think. So when you read great headlinings, interesting headlines that jobs only increased by $22,000 or 22,000 jobs in the month of August. That isn't your industry. Sorry, it's not your industry, because that includes the immigration that has impacted that. That includes manufacturing jobs that have really slowed down as they put a pause on to say, hey, how are these tariffs going to affect us? So yes, that's not true, but you know that adage that statistics don't lie, but statisticians do, right? So it's kind of, some of that where you just can't take that and run with it. And why do I tell you that? Because when you go to ask for your 3.9% labor budget for 2026, you may have a board member say, well, yeah, but job growth slowed down, and that's true, but that's not your job market, and it certainly isn't the specialty jobs that we've just talked about, right? So I just want to arm you with what you need to educate them so that they can make a very good decision for your organization, right? So, many of the community banks and credit unions are still investing in people hedging against turnover, which is so expensive inside your organizations. Now, everything I just said could totally turn on its face if we get stagflation, which isn't going to be good for anyone. So I remember last year I had a whole merit matrix, and really within 2 weeks I had to completely rewrite the whole thing. So we're right at that time. And for those of you that are like, tell me what the budget's going to be. We want these salary ranges. Where's Jordan? Is he here? Jordan? He was back there. Until Jordan benchmarks every job for every asset size from all those surveys for banks and credit unions, we won't know. So your ranges will come out October 22nd. And the reason it comes out October 22nd is because we probably found out October 19th what the actual movement was. And we're getting that updated as fast as we get it, you get it. I promise you. All right? All right. Another trend is wage compression. I'm seeing some heads nodded there, and pay equity. And the problem with that is, dead blame it, they're just not as fast to correct it as they were in 2022. They're like, Give them a 3% raise. They're just not taking it as serious. And I've just done this long enough that it just is a little sad, because I know that integrity, doing the right thing for the right reasons, that's really, I'm going to get a little preachy here, but that's in our core values. And then you're like, yeah, but there's internal equity issues here. And they're like, And, crickets, you can't get approval to move something. And I know it hurts you, because I know HR people are very socially justice-minded people who want to be good business partners. And it pains you personally when you can't do what you know is the right thing to do. I know that hurts you. So many HR departments are conducting annual salary range reviews. I think we're always conservative, and I don't know that we come across that way, but if you just knew how conservative we are when we say, well, every 3 years we should recalibrate all of your jobs because your strategies are evolving, your jobs are changing, your structure is changing, and if I don't believe in it, you shouldn't believe in it. So I think it's really important that you review that you're doing your equity audits, and then hopefully this will prompt even some out-of-cycle internal adjustments. The problem with that is if only the squeaky wheel gets the oil, all right? So those people who come to you and they've been out to www.IAin'tPaidEnough.com and they see a number there and they come back to you and they've got a hot job with fast-moving salary and their manager will go to bat for them, they can get some movement if you want to keep them. But the people that are like, I'll just keep my head down, I'm going to take this job on the low end because I want to get my foot in the door. Can we say females? You want to get my foot in the door, and hopefully that they'll see I'm doing a good job and I'm going to get my just desserts. Just desserts is about a 3% salary increase, okay? Those are just desserts. That just does not catch up. So anyway, so as your organizations are running leaner, as your employee count per asset dollar is decreasing, you're pushing for efficiency, things like using efficiency tools is very important. Data-centric hiring, efficiency gains, competitive pressures, all of those. So if your company is not already using these kind of tools, I think it's the worst money you ever saved. From personal experience, I have to say I think it's the worst money I ever thought I was saving. So remaining staff, when there is turnover, are expected to carry, much broader responsibilities. Now, pro tip, this job with some additional duties, if those duties are really the same level as the original duties, does not change your grade. So just doing something a little extra doesn't change your grade. But if it's at a higher level, and how would you know? You're not managing the department. So, and we know those department heads are not the best at updating those job descriptions and keeping you in the know, right? That's right. So recalibrating that to make sure that that job that you thought was graded accurately is actually still graded accurately for the way it's used today. Very important. If you just knew the cost of turnover, you would, if your organization, oh, that's right, Rachel is speaking on the ROI of, what's it called? Gonna say it? Yes, the ROI of competitive compensation later today. Yes, that's right. She'll clue you in on that. Right. So overall, job openings have declined, and from 8 million in August of 2024 to 7.4 million in 2025. But those aren't necessarily your jobs. So skilled roles like commercial lending, IT, compliance, cybersecurity, still very hard to fill. So the entry level and mid-level seekers are having a hard time. My heart, which is probably the least important conversation here, goes out to the college graduates. Because if you got a degree in something you really wanted to do, and you don't get to use it right away, but you have to support yourself, so you take a job in customer service because you still have to live. And then 18 months go by, and then are you still considered, is that degree still as interesting, as merit-worthy as the people that are graduating with the new information? I think they lose a little bit on that. And if 41, what's that figure, where it is, 41.4% of college graduates are underemployed, that just worries me, especially, and then go ahead and take on that debt for that too, okay? And then, right? So that's kind of a thing. That's a deal. Okay. I hope I didn't get too preachy on that, but there we go. Digital transformation is definitely reducing the need for routine teller and clerical roles, increasing demand for more data savvy, more tech enabled. So a lot of organizations are redesigning that. You all know that, and or outsourcing that. And then there's a real focus on mental health and flexibility. You've probably heard me say that every year. And I know this is near and dear to your heart as well. You want to get comp right, and then what, right? I have to tell you, you've got to go back and talk to the Motivosity people with the big feeties. See those big feet? Hold one of those up. Those are fun. Those are slippers. Wouldn't you love to be sitting under your desk with those slippers on and talking all businessy up here, but then on your feet you have those Yeti feet? That's hysterical. But as far as culture, getting people to have a grateful heart and recognizing the contributions of their colleagues, I mean, that is key to happiness, a happy environment. It's just important. So you may want to find out what they're doing over there and how that they can help create a structure. You either create a structure for something to occur regularly or it doesn't happen. It's just like, remember that book, Who Moved My Cheese? It was a great idea, right? Was that not cool? And then it was gone like the next month, right? So you've got to have some structure to make sure these things are happening. So flexible hours, mental health days, expanded EAP are rising. Here, I need to make a statement though. What you do for your benefits, not just health and wellness benefits, but anything you do to make your work environment better. Say you have, like, guess what? Our full-time people only have to work 38 hours. They don't have to work 40 hours. It does not change what you have to pay in the market to hire that skill set. It doesn't change it. And therefore, the compa ratio is the compa ratio because it compares you to market. Whether that market is, but they get 10% in their 401k, or they don't have to work as many hours, or we have an incredible EAP program, or any of the other, we use Motivosity and everyone around here is happy and they love each other. Like, no matter what, that doesn't affect what is the market rate for a role. Those are the other things that are a differentiator between a good place to work and a great place to work, right? That's just, I want to arm you with that because I really want you to make sure you educate your executives about that, all right? So when we come out with our merit increase matrix, actually I think we have. We just posted the article on the definitive, did we not, Jackie? Jennifer? Did we post that? Yes, thank you. I want to make sure I'm right. I love my marketing team. That was my tender moment. It's gone. Okay. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. Where was I going? Oh, yes, we've come out with it, and it's on our website on the definitive merit increase matrix. And for those of you interested, there are budget builder training sessions you can sign up for on our website. You should all come. And when you come, we'll work with you individually on your own labor budget. So it's a really cool thing. So yes, overall, a particular grade may have moved X%. Overall, a job classification, like you're exempt, may have moved 3%, or maybe it's 2.5%. I don't remember which one. But that doesn't mean every job moved that, right? So that's really important. So think about that. In your salary structure, maybe the midpoint moved 3%. That makes sense. But if you have a fast-moving job like chief lending officers, this was just the BalancedComp survey, so I'm not saying all the surveys together showed this, but if it moved 8.61%, the head of risk 5.30, the head of trust 7.28. So the midpoint creeped up a bit, but they're actually higher than what it's showing. Their compa ratio is higher than what it's showing. That's why we added the functionality that will allow you to add a premium to a particular job, because if that's fast moving, like head of risk has been fast moving for, I think, 3 or 4 years, and that's the lowest I've seen it move, okay? So you can see where they can jump a grade. You wouldn't know. We didn't recalibrate. How would you know? The compa ratio could be wrong, and you could be at risk with very important jobs, and we certainly don't want that for any of you. So head of trust, you can see CFO, 4.83%. Some fast-moving non-exempt salaries, again, according to last year's salary survey. We just closed the survey this year, and we just didn't have time to examine it in the short time before we got here. But last year, payroll specialists, who knew? 13.3%. You guys will all get these slides. They will all be given to you after the presentation. The recruiter, 11.27. Now, all of their midpoints in your structure probably moved 2.5 to 3. So am I making my point there on why that's a big deal to you? And if it happens a couple of years in a row, like I remember when mortgage underwriters used to be grade 9. They're not now because it moved so fast so many years in a row that it jumped grades. And that's level 1, okay? All right. And now teller salaries. Let's breathe a sigh of relief that teller salaries that have moved 5.6% in 2023, 5.4% in 2024. This is all according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This isn't one survey. Have slowed to a 2.4% year to date in 2025. So you'll probably get a little bit of relief there. And you've all done so much for the teller line, which is great. I mean, you've made sure the pain was there and you responded, right? But it probably hurts more to lose a CFO or a CEO or a head of risk, the head of trust, the CHRO. It is far more damaging and reverberates inside of the organization much more intently than losing tellers, as much as we love them and as important as they are. Stop me if you think I'm wrong. And so thinking about these executive jobs, I think leads to needing information on supplemental executive retirement benefits, who's eligible. There's really a growing number of participants that are eligible at different asset sizes that are changing. Like I think the head of HR and certain asset sizes that's normal. And I would go wave hi, JR. I would go talk to JR over there at Nucleus. That is a language I don't even understand. So he's your guy. Some specialty jobs like your CSO, your senior trust officer, so many different levels of project managers, software developers, HR generals. These are some of the fastest growing specialty jobs. Now, I brought you some more data that you could only find here, and I'm very, very excited about sharing this with you because I've never seen it anywhere, and you need to know this. What percentage of base pay is your competitor spending on variable pay? So if you have a $22 million labor budget, these are the percentages that credit unions at different asset sizes and banks at different asset sizes are paying. That would be a good thing for you to go back and take a look at, wouldn't it? Have you ever seen that anywhere else? I think it's so cool. Our team, I'm going to brag for just a moment, are doing such a great job of looking at the 67,000 employees in our database and finding what kind of data can we take away that will empower these HR directors to make a difference in their organization. That's where our head is. That's where our intention is. And banks have always paid more in variable pay. I would just expect, as much as you guys compete, I would just think that gap would probably shorten in some period of time, but I haven't seen it in the last several years for sure. But let me just clue you in, if you're not already aware, take me at my word. There is no difference on how you pay on base, whether it's the CEO role, whether it's the teller role, or anything in between. You are not paying differently on base. So don't be afraid to look at other surveys. It's the reality. So you can count on that. So what does this mean for you? So it means that you really must proactively monitor and adjust your pay structures, looking very closely at those specialty roles with midpoints that are moving much faster than market. Prepare for equity audits and transparency compliance. Benchmark and recalibrate post-merger and expansions. We can't get HR in there fast enough. As soon as your payroll systems are one, you need to that's a good time to start looking at compensation, because the reality is, if you say we're going to wait until the dust settles, the dust ain't never settling. It's not settling for a long time, and you could have lost a lot of people in the meantime. So compete for specialized talent with market-aligned offers. Look at your wage compression. And there are many jobs that forget the financial institution data. There can be a $20,000 difference at the midpoint from switching that data to all industries to your industry. Now, you can choose which one you want to use, but you need to know about both of them. Then you can make that call. But you can't make the call unless you know them both. We try to provide context and that kind of context with our recommendations so that you can make a good choice for yourself. So I would plan on a 3.9% labor budget. That's the most uninteresting number. If your people are already paid largely over market, you don't need 3.9. But if you've just moved into a new peer group and you've got people paid low in the range, you're going to need more than that. So when they ask, what's the average labor budget, that is like this much of the answer that they need, just one finger's worth. So in addition to that, you need a 1% extra for your promotional salary increases. That is average. You need to evaluate your incentive payouts to make sure you're paying competitive. For those of you that are hiring commercial lenders, they might get more incentive pay than their boss is used to getting. That can cause some cultural problems and discussions that need to be had. But that is the reality. So do you want to be a high base pay shop to make up for that? Or are you willing to take the risk, or are we going to adjust? I think those are about the three most common responses to that. So and then recalibrating your jobs to accommodate for an increase in technical skills that are required. So here's what the winning teams are required to do. 47% are leveling up their employee experience. And that's where all the fun is too. Figuring out midpoints is not the most fun, right? 43% are doubling down on health and wellness. Woo, over there, motivosity. 40% are investing again in training after cutting back last year, because a comp plan without development is like giving someone a pay raise and asking them not to spend it. So, all righty, great. So we have about another 7 minutes. I actually went a little bit over, but I did want to leave a little time for what kind of compensation challenges are on your mind or that you'd want to ask each other. We'll get to more of that in the roundtables too. So are there any questions right now that come to mind? Right over here, do we have great, Thea?
Hi, I'm Sandy with Marine Bank. Hi. And my question is, are you seeing growth regionally higher in some regions than others?
Jordan, I'm not. Are you? Finding it fairly consistent? That doesn't feel like that should be the answer I'm giving you, but that's the answer that I have. There isn't anything that's a great question. I would take that question and turn it around to mean, are we seeing geos that are moving faster in some markets than other? And Sandy, the truth is we haven't looked at that since last October because we're updating our salary ranges September 22nd. And then at that same time, we're evaluating the geos. So you are just about 2 weeks ahead, but I promise I will send you that information. I won't forget this moment because I would love to answer that. But I don't know, I haven't looked at it in a while. Because people don't want me to change their geos mid-year, like your ranges change. So yeah, ma'am, over here.
Hi, I'm Tanya from CDC Credit Union. I was wondering, do you have a standard, or does it change from industry as far as incentives on consumer lenders that are consultants that they get incentive pay for how many loans they close per month?
You're asking if we see incentive pay structures for consumer lenders based on number of loans closed. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
You are in the right room, my dear. Anyone here want to tell me, do we have consumer loan incentive plans based on number of loans closed? We do over here. He'd be happy to talk to you. Anybody else? Based on number. What about based on dollar amount of loans closed? Okay, so anyone, consumer loan officers based on, and by the way, I got to ask you a question. When you say consumer loan officer, do you mean underwriter or do you mean salesperson?
Sales.
Okay, so based on dollar production. Yeah, right over here. Anybody else? Oh, and right over there. Great. She was saying yes, I think. I don't know if she had a question. She was saying yes, she does have that. Does that help? You're in the right room, and ask that question again at the HR roundtables this afternoon. Okay? I think we have time for 1 or 2 other questions. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Bonnie, Kitsap Credit Union in Washington State.
Yes.
This is kind of for the whole room. Have any of you, we've got all these crazy little mini reorgs going on, one department says, oh, well, IT did this, so I think we need to restructure too. And they're coming to me with jobs that they're like, okay, so I want to hire this help desk administrator 3. And I'm like, well, we don't have a 1 and a 2. They're like, well, here's the job description for the 3. And I'm like, but we don't have a 1 and a 2. Is anybody else dealing with that right now? I just feel like how are we doing this succession of jobs without the whole succession? Don't come to me unless you've got all 3 job descriptions.
Forever and ever. I met you at breakfast, and I think you said you've been in HR for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Forever and ever. Hyperinflated job titles has been a war that HR has battled. And now they have Grok and ChatGPT to help them write it. We see them send those through and ask us to grade it, and I'm like, this is bullshit. All of this is fluff. Can you tell me what they do? What do they do? They're just showing leadership. You're like, come on. What are they doing? It's a thing, and you should put your HR foot down. There you go. All right. I've had so much fun with you today. I was afraid this would be about as much fun as, the U.S. economy, an economic speech. But this was a lot of fun. I hope this was valuable. I'm so glad you're here. You can catch me in the lounge if you have any other questions. I'll be there all week. All right. Thank you.